Hello.
He- Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tea Talks. Today we have with us Sriraksha V Srivastav, Vatsav, uh, and she is a litigation associate with CLPR. And welcome, Sriraksha, to our Tea Talks.
Thank you for the welcome, Nesara. Really glad to be here. I would like to thank Paras and everyone who was coordinating with me to make this happen. Yeah, looking forward to this session.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. And for our audience, can you please introduce yourself?
I'm Sriraksha. I'm an advocate. So I graduated from Tamil Nadu National Law University in the year 2019. And after that, I was practicing in Madras High Court, focusing on gender-based violence and several public interest litigation. Currently, I'm the Litigation Associate at Center for Law and Policy Research. I also head the Trans Law Cell here. My main focus is intersection of caste, class, and gender.
That's wonderful. For our audience, what is the trans law cell that CLPR runs, and whom can it help, and in what kind of situations?
CLPR's focus areas are gender and sexual minorities, and Trans Law Cell is where we provide free legal assistance. It may be just any kind of legal query or legal help, or also assistance in any kind of litigation that may happen in courts. So, for example, it may include name and gender change in official document after a transgender person transitions, or it also may include filing an FIR in the police stations, to filing petitions for finding where the missing partners are. So it includes a variety and range of legal services, which is completely free. And we also have weekly drop-in sessions, that is from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. on every Tuesdays, and there's no consultation charges, and it's completely free.
That's great. There is some such a thing for the community, and it's free. And what are some of the recent cases that CLPR in trans law cell has um, is involved with?
So, we do provide crisis intervention as well to several transgender persons, and as well as people from the LGBTQ community. But we have had several successful cases. For example, Jiva versus State of Karnataka, where we had to file a petition before the High Court of Karnataka to get the name and gender change for a transgender person, because the authorities, school authorities, were refusing to change. So after we have filed it, the court directed the authorities to change the name and gender in official educational documents, and also this led to a policy change in the state of Karnataka. So now there is a circular that has been issued by the Karnataka Education Department, where it says that if a transgender person is coming forward to amend their name and gender in official documents like the PUC certificates or the SSLC certificates, they have to accept their request and then look at the documents, and also ensure if a court decree is needed, they have to go and get it. So this is important because there was nothing of this sort earlier. And we have also helped we have recently also filed another case before the Karnataka High Court for a central government employee who identifies as a trans woman, because they were not changing the employee service records. And we have helped several trans persons who were sexually assaulted before the high courts and the trial courts. And we have even sent legal notices to house owners who are not giving back security deposits only based on their gender identity, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the cases that CLPR has taken up and try to bring about a change within the community and help have access to justice for the community.
That's great. You talked about the Karnataka Education Board for changing certificates. So, right now, with the victory that you've had, Is it easy, or how does the process work? Do people still have to go to court, or they can just go with their transgender ID or whatever gender change document they have to the university?
So, before I answer that question, I would like to just give a small legal background about trans rights and the law that's prevailing in India right now, so that there is a holistic understanding of what needs to be done. So, as you might know, and also for people who might not know, in 2014, the Supreme Court delivered the Nalsa judgment. It's a very monumental judgment for trans rights because it was the first time the Supreme Court of India legally recognized transgender persons as those who have equal protection of law, equality before law, and also have all kinds of fundamental rights that were available to every person in the country. So that led to a series of changes in the law. And the Supreme Court also directed the state and central government to have reservation for transgender persons and legally recognize them in institutions, as well as provide other kind of benefits, welfare schemes, health schemes, so on. So this led to the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019. So the law that now governs trans rights is the Trans Act, or 3G Act of 2019, and it also comes with its rules, which was enacted in 2020. So this is where we go to now know about what the prevailing rights for transgender persons are. So under the TG Act of 2019, there is a two-step process to get a TG ID card. So if you see the act has its problems on its own, but I would just give a brief overview of what the act is and what you need to do to get the TG card and why do you need to get a TG card. So, firstly, the act does recognize the fundamental right of self determination, and then goes on to say that the transgender person shall possess a certificate of identity, that is the TG card here. And then, if you want to recognize yourself as a binary gender, either male or female, then you have to apply for a revised certificate. So, first, you have to identify yourself as a transgender person by filing a self sworn affidavit and file it before the district magistrate. And then, after seeing the veracity of it, the district magistrate issues a certificate of identity, which is the TG Act. So, but now, if you want to identify as a gender, binary gender, or male or female, you have to produce something called a medical certificate showing proof that you have undergone some kind of medical intervention. So while the act says a surgery is required for reflecting your gender as a male or female, the rules are inconsistent with that. The rules dilute the procedure and say medical intervention is any gender affirming procedure, which even includes a psychological report stating gender dysphoria by the doctor, or hormone replacement therapy, or even surgery for that matter. And then, but this should be issued by the chief medical officer or the medical superintendent by the medical institution, which can be either private or public. And after looking and checking at this certificate is only when the district magistrate can then give you the revised ID card. So this inconsistency has caused a lot of problems, and inherently the act dilute undermines NALSA itself, because NALSA recognized that you can every transgender person has a fundamental right to self determine their identity. They can identify as a transgender person, they can identify as a male, or they can identify as a female without any proof of medical intervention. But this act is in contradiction to that principle, and that is why it's being challenged before the Supreme Court by many trans activists and the community. So, how to apply for this card? So, so the act says that until there is an online facility to do so, you can do it in person or through post. So now there is a centralized national portal, which is called the National Portal for Transgender Persons. So you have to go to that account. This is all completely online, where you need an internet access, you need a Gmail account or a personal mail ID, and you need to create an account, register, and then go through the process of clicking what kind of application you need, and then you complete every step, that is like putting in your dead name, you're putting in your preferred name, and having a scanned copy of the documents that's required, like an Aadhaar card or any other government ID like a PAN card. And then you upload the self-sworn affidavit that I'm talking about, where you identify yourself as a transgender person first and you upload it. So this is really difficult for most members of the community, because they don't have access to internet and even a smartphone for that matter. So this has not been really taken into account by the authorities. But we have also heard that people still go in person and apply directly to the district magistrate. So the portal, what it does is it centralizes the process, and it just then forwards to the concerned district magistrate. So who is this district magistrate? So district magistrate is a judge who's appointed in the area where you're living. So it's like a jurisdictional or territorial judge who takes care of the matters in that area. So you have to submit it before him or her to do so. Uh, so we have had people coming and telling that they have directly gone and submitted, and they keep tabs of what's happening and not as well. So there is a confusion among the community as well, whether it needs to be online or it needs to be offline, because if you because then it also depends on the states, each states in India. For example, I've heard in Tamil Nadu you can file it online and then go check offline. And in Karnataka, people who apply online, they don't know what the status is, but certain districts allow offline as well. So this parity among us of to how to even apply for a TG card is a big problem. So after all this, and you get either the TG card or the revised TG card. So that is the crux of the procedure. So if there's anything else you would like me to add on, I'll do that.
Yeah, I have a few questions about this. So, one thing you said is there's no even a psychiatric, because this is a confusion the community has. So,
Yes.
even a psychiatric uh, evaluation for gender dysphoria will survive for this process, right? Survive for this
Yes.
process. Okay, that's one clarification.
I
Second is,
my
yeah,
sorry
please.
to interrupt. So if you want to know where exactly that's given in the act, so for example, section 7 mandates surgery, whereas rule 2I defines what a medical intervention is. It's rule
Okay.
2I, which says that even as any gender affirming procedure, which includes even a psychological assessment report from your doctor, is sufficient. But there is a contradiction in the act itself, and that's problematic. But we
Okay.
have so many people have pushed it, and they have got with HRT certificates and gender dysphoria certificates. So that has been happening. So that
Yeah.
way it's better this way.
Okay, so they can get their binary gender markers through
Yeah.
this. And what if, when it goes to a district magistrate, he insists on surgery? He says, okay, there's no surgery document. So, in such situations, what can be done?
So I till now told you what happens to get a certificate if it's been approved by the district magistrate. So there is a separate process if this application is being rejected on some grounds. For example, once you file an application, technically within 30 days you have to get the TG card, and then if you don't get it, or if it's being rejected for any kind of administrative reasons, or if you have not submitted your affidavit properly, they should let you know. They should intimate that it's not being done properly, so you have to do it again. So, or if they reject saying that you haven't produced any medical intervention for the first step, that is just getting a TG card in itself, that is a violation under the act. You can either go for a review before the same district magistrate and say that, listen, this is what the act says. I have produced the affidavit in accordance with the rules and how it should be done. I put in all my details, but still it's being refused, and I don't think this is right. So you give the card to me again. They will look into it, and if everything is in order, they can give it to you. And if it's not being done, you have another alternate remedy, that is the appeal, saying that I have been refused the ID card for so and so reasons, but it is not right and it's not in accordance with the act. So, for example, for several of our clients, even recently, one of our clients and was rejected. Like they had applied for a revised TG card where the gender marker needs to be female, but it was rejected on the basis that they had submitted the HRT certificate by the medical officer, and everything was in order, but they had rejected it saying you didn't undergo surgery. So we had to file an appeal before the appellate authority in each state. So this has to be notified by the government themselves. So in this case, it was the district collector in the capital of the state. So we had to file an appeal saying that, listen, even though the act says this, Rule 2I does say any medical intervention, and the rules for providing a change in the gender marker in the TG card itself says any medical intervention only. So after going through the appeal, they had a hearing, and after that, they have now been directed to give a revised TG card. So that's how
Okay.
the process is.
And the appeal process, for the appeal process, they'll have to come to trans law cell, or they can do it through any lawyer.
You can do it through any lawyer, but transfer cell would be more than happy to help any member of the community. So, but it's just that you have to just file an appeal saying that it was rejected on these grounds, and
Yeah.
but the law says this, so it is a violation and it's illegal. So please issue me uh, revised TG card. So that's like the minimal format that any lawyer or even transgender persons can use. So the act doesn't mandate that you have to come with a lawyer. It's something that you yourself can do. It will be filed by the applicant themselves. It's just as lawyers, we can just help them put the grounds together and make a good case for them so that it doesn't get rejected. Because the problem is, even these authorities who issue these cards, including the district magistrate or the appellate authorities or the medical officers, sometimes do not know what the law is. They
Yeah.
this act in itself is very fresh, and it's like it's not been implemented properly or enacted properly in any of the states, and the contradictions in the act also make it very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And the and the hearing that you said, is it something like a court hearing that happens in the court, or is it something in the office of the?
So it depends on so for example, in this case it was before the district collector
Mm-hmm.
in the particular state. So you just have to go to the office and keep
Yeah.
following up, and it was just like they just called the person and they said, okay, today is your appeal, we are going to hear your case. They just say what the problem is, and then it's not like a court setup.
Okay.
There's no hearing, it's not like you versus judge or anything like that. It's just an authority who is overseeing if there was a mistake made by the district magistrate. It's like a relief system that is being brought up in the act. So you have to have some kind of recourse if something goes wrong with the authority who's issuing it. So it is not like you need to really know the law, or you need to argue, or you need to plead, but it would be helpful if you do have understanding of the TG Act in the whole, and also have your medical documents, both photocopies and the original, and also have NALSA with you, also have the TG Act and the rules with you. This will ensure that even the person who's issuing the cards are well aware of the basic laws which governs trans rights.
Okay. Please excuse me because I'm going again and again on the same topic, because I think that's a very important topic for a lot of people, and there's a lot of confusion around. So, the appeal. So, where does one do this appeal? To the same magistrate or to some other office?
So so if you read the TG Act,
Mm-hmm.
it's left to each government to bring up and notify who this authority is. So, for example, in Gujarat, it can be the social defense department
Mm-hmm.
who's the chief secretary of that to take this appeal. In Tamil Nadu, it can be someone else. So you would have to do a basic research and check on who you should file this appeal against. So, for example, that's what we did in Gujarat. So we first it was the district magistrate. So when it has was rejected and it came online, that was rejected because a sex reassignment surgery was not done. So we had to look up in notification saying who has been notified and who has been assigned to take the appeals up, and then we reach out and then we draft the appeal and ask the transgender person to go and appeal there. So it is just not a list of officers, okay, these are the people in India taking care of the appeals. You would have to check every state as to where the appeal is going to, and the sad part is most of the states have not notified this.
Okay.
So that is also a problem. So most of the and another limitation of the act is that while the review needs to be disposed within the appeal review needs to be disposed within 90 days, the appeal does not have a timeline as to when the appeal needs to be disposed. So there are these small problems and limitation which will have great repercussions and even getting a TG card.
Yeah. Yeah. And for our audience again, who is a district magistrate and where does he usually sit?
So a district magistrate is a judge, so who sits in a court. So under the TG Act, the concerned district magistrate for one person will be where they are presently residing. For example, if I am living in Alsur in Bangalore, so for in that territorial jurisdiction, for example, Alsur and Savaji Nagar and Infantry Road will all be clubbed under one judge. So that judge will take care of all the applications that's coming to him. So you would have to look at the police limits as well to determine which district magistrate you can approach. So generally, if you go to a court and say, okay, I am from this area, which court should I go to, or which district magistrate should I ask help for, they will let you know. But also you can also simultaneously apply it online, and because that will directly be sent to the district magistrate. But
Okay.
we have had people who's doing both, who have done offline as well as online, who has done only offline by knowing where to go and who to approach by asking the court officers there and the judges there. So it is all ad hoc and it is all like going and figuring out how to get it done, because there is no concrete system in place, even though there is a special legislation that has been enacted for this specific purpose.
Yeah. So, coming back to our original question. So, right now, with a transgender ID card, can I change my educational certificates? And what else can I do with it?
Yes, so the act does give every person who has gotten a TG card under the act to officially change their name and gender in all documents. So if the act even has an illustrative list of documents, it starts from birth name, even gas connection, to even passport. So having a TG card does help you get every official document of yours changed. So you can go forward and change it. The relevant section, if anyone would like to know, is section 6, clause 2. So that's where you look at, and at the in the rules there is a separate illustrative list that's there.
Okay, thank you very much. So, right now, there's also something called as Gazette notification procedure for changing the name and gender. Is that still valid? And if I've got my name change previously in Gazette notification, do I still have to do the TG ID card?
So the TG Act came into force only in 2019. So people who have changed their name and gender prior to this act need not file an application under this act to get the TG card or even change their name and gender. But though after the act is come in, that is after 2019, I would say one can still change the name and gender through the gazette notification method, because for example for state and central government employees, gazette notification is still mandatory to change their name in employee service records. For example, even Aadhaar rules says that, even other rules for anyone for that matter, if even if a cis-het person wants to change a name, they would have to submit a gazette notification for changing their name. So the gazette notification method as well as the method under the by procuring a TG card run parallelly, and you can still change your name using a gazette method. But um, yeah, you can do both.
Yeah, yeah. And uh, what about all the affirmative actions that may come in future? Will I still get it without a TG card and only a gazette notification?
So the recent trend that we have been seeing is that many state governments are starting to give reservations for transgender persons, or like call for applications for public posts, or give any kind of, for example, even COVID relief cash funds. So there were several schemes that's been coming across, and most government are insisting on a transgender identity card. So it is much easier to avail these benefits and welfare schemes if you do have a TG card. And we are under the impression that it will be mandated soon, even though there is no explicit mandate in the act itself that you need to have a TG card under this act to get any kind of affirmative action or benefits or welfare schemes from the state. It is a growing trend, and it is with which they feel that the benefit can be conferred to the transgender person. So it would be better to have a transgender identity card, but that does not uh, if you feel like you're not comfortable. So many people from the transgender community are not comfortable with the two-step process that I had told you about earlier, where you
Yeah.
need to show your medical proof to even avail the revised transgender identity card. So they feel like, okay, I don't really want to go through that process, that violative process. So, but it is going to be a mandate, is what we are gathering from what we are seeing.
Okay. So the transgender ID card is going to be a mandate, not the surgical process.
Yes. So most of the welfare schemes and
Mhm.
the affirmative action has a growing trend of insisting on having proof of a TG card to avail any of those benefits.
Okay.
So it's always better to have one if you plan to have access to those benefits, social benefits, or it can be any kind of affirmative action. And but some are still, like I said, some are still apprehensive about the two-step process, that you have to show your medical intervention. But we have had many clients come and say they do insist on TG cards. So, and they have gone and then applied for TG cards and gotten it for applying for a specific police constable post, or like availing ration benefits, or getting cash for COVID
Yeah.
uh, assistance. So it is a growing trend that you do need a TG card to avail these.
Okay. And based on TG card, okay, this educational, we've asked our audiences for some questions. So, educational certificate is again a recurring theme. So, based on TG card, how do I change my educational certificates?
So, like I said before, the TG Act says that you can change any official document, which includes educational documents as well, to change your name and gender. So, with the TG card, you can make a representation to CBSE or your current state educational board to like send a representation saying I was so on and so forth, but I've been identifying as so on and so forth, and I've also have procured a transgender identity card, and here's a copy of it. So please update the name and change. So, and they are bound to make the change and give it to you.
Okay, thank you. Now I have a question about marriage. Can a transgender person, maybe binary or non binary, marry in India?
So, NALSA judgment, like I said before, recognized every transgender person's right to marry. But as you know, the personal laws which govern marriage adoption have not been adopted yet. And like in India, marriages are governed by your religion. Correct. So, for example,
Yeah.
if a transgender person who who grows up to be a Hindu, and they identify as a binary person, then they can get married and registered under this act. So there was a Madras High Court case. I'll just tell you the name for that. It's a Madras High Court case called the Arun Kumar versus Inspector General of Registration others. So in this case was filed because the marriage register failed, just refused to register a marriage between a cis person and a trans woman.
Hmm.
And then this went to court, and the court recognized NALSA and upheld it, saying that you have to interpret law. So, because in Hindu Marriage Act, under which these people were trying to register the marriage, it only says bride and groom. So the court interpreted the word bride under the umbrella of NALSA and said that a trans woman would be given the recognition of a bride under the Hindu Marriage Act, and they are entitled to marry, and it should be registered under the act. There was another case by Madras High Court which starts with the name Mansoor Rahman, where it was held that a marriage between a cishet person and a transgender person is also bound for police protection. So the laws till now have recognized a marriage between a heterosexual and a transgender person who is identified with binary gender. But a transgender person who does not align with both or with recognized as a third gender, those marriages have not been recognized.
Okay. So the current issues that were there, these were people who had binary gender on their IDs, but still based on their appearance, the marriage registrar refused to
Yeah,
register the marriage.
they I we don't know the exact specific of whether they had gone through that or not, but I think they had gone through surgery at that point, and they
Hmm.
identify as a trans woman. So based on that, they said yes, you can go ahead and register the marriage because they come under the term right based
Yeah.
on the NASA judgment. But just a transgender person who's non-binary,
Mhm.
till now, it has not been recognized. However, live in relationships are allowed now thanks to the decriminalization of 377 and everything else. Live in relationships are there, but it's not a marriage equivalent.
Okay. And you also said that trans marriage between a cishet man and a cishet person and a trans woman or a man is also eligible for police protection. What does that mean?
So, for example, when these kind of marriages happen, so there is a lot of agitation from communities, right? Either from the families or just the communities, or um, so usually there are threats saying that these marriages should not happen, and if you do it, there are like which might even lead to honor crimes at some point. So this was really taken into account by one of from by the Madras High Court, and said that they are even entitled to police protection, leave alone the right to marry.
Okay, all right. So that's really good to know. And can a transgender person legally adopt a child in India?
So once again, that's the problem is NALSA has covered all of these, and it has recognized and upheld the rights of transgender persons, from right to marry, right to adopt, right to purchase properties, right to parental inheritance, and everything. But the personal laws in India are often governed based on the religion. and not based on gender as such. So none of these personal laws have been amended. For example, for Hindus, the law that governs adoption is the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. So the conditions under that act is that only a Hindu male or a Hindu female can adopt. So now, if a person identifies again as a binary gender, then they are entitled for adoption. But if it's non-binary and they identify as a third gender, then there is no scope for adoption as such, as how the law stands. But there is another set of rules that govern adoption, which is the Juvenile Justice Act. There as well, again, it's a single male or a single female. So once again, the differentiation between a non-binary transgender person and a binary transgender person kicks in.
Yeah.
So it is always favorable for a person who identifies as some gender rather than non-binary or a transgender person. So only if you identify as a binary transgender person, you're entitled to marriage, you're entitled to adoption. So that's where the law stands now. And there are certain recommendations that have come up saying that the entire adoption law must be harmonized and regulated so that persons from the LGBTQ community can adopt. But let's see when that happens.
Yeah. Okay. So, in again, marriage setup, if if I'm in a heterosexual marriage and one of the person in a heterosexual marriage decides to transition and also legally change their markers, will their marriage still be valid?
So the marriage will still be valid until the documents are changed. But most people in this kind of situation, they either prefer a divorce or like be as friends or partners, or just move on with life without going through the process of to see whether their marriage is still legal or not. But yes, so that's like the short version of the answer to that.
Okay.
But until their legal documents are changed, they would still be on paper legally married.
Okay. The moment they go for TG card or something like that, that would disrupt
Yes.
the
Yeah.
marriage. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very complicated thing because they have not divorced, but the marriage is not valid yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And there's a lot of experimental, these days, there's a lot of experimental or discounted surgeries performed by doctors on trans people. Uh, and sometimes it's just to hone their skills or try a new technique, etc. So, if at all, I've seen a lot of times people go through such surgeries and the post-op care is just not there. And I've heard people, the doctor just stopped receiving their calls, and the person lives with a deformity. And what kind of is there any legal recourse this person can take in such scenarios against the doctor, though
Yes.
it was free?
Yes, absolutely. So as they can always opt for and file a case for medical negligence before the
Mhm.
courts. They can also like claim for compensation before the Consumer Protection Act, and also even file a complaint under the Transgender Protection Act now.
Okay.
So they do have every avenue to go and complain for any kind of negligence that's been um, taken by the doctors. And they can also prefer a police complaint. They can also prefer a complaint before the Consumer Forums Act, because Consumer Protection Act covers medical professionals as well. And if the service is deficient, in this case, if the surgery is not proper and they have had severe side effects because of their, or that they have, like you said, they live with deformity, they can always go forward and file a claim.
And can trans law cell help them with such issues?
Yes, absolutely. Like I have said before, we do offer any kind of legal service, which may even include filing cases before courts, filing claims before consumer protection forums. So yes, absolutely.
And for the trans law cell to seek help from trans law cell, do they have to be around Karnataka, or is there?
No, so we extend our services across India. So, but for example, if you are in Delhi, so and we would first do an online consultation or just give us a phone call, and we will ask you what the issue is, and like we'll ask you to send you documents so that we know what exactly the issue is and what kind of legal advice we can give you, because not every case might require you to knock the doors of the court. So depending on all that, we will then advise whether you need to file a representation or a complaint before the police, or like go to a certain government authority for some kind of relief, or go to court directly. So depending on all this, we can draft what's necessary, or like we can help you write a complaint, or we can help you file a case. Like we might be in Bangalore, but we will be in constant touch with you, and if we have local lawyers in Delhi who can help you physically go and file the case, we would do that, and we can even argue for you in cases. So it is an entire range of legal services that we are providing right now.
Okay. Coming back to these botched up surgery part, so usually during these surgeries, these experimental or skill honing surgeries, there's also some consent form that is taken from the patient that the doctor is not responsible for anything that can go wrong. What about the validity of such consent or signatures that are taken? Will they be of any problem if such?
So ultimately, that consent form is like a disclaimer that the doctor is trying to tell the patient, okay, this might happen. But for you to claim any kind of negligence, or for you to claim any kind of compensation, or you to know that there's been like fundamentally something wrong with the surgery, there needs to be a higher threshold saying that, okay, this is what I signed up for, but this has happened. And if you are able to make a case for it, regardless of whether you have signed the consent form or not, you can always go and seek relief, legal relief, or any kind of judicial relief for that matter.
Okay. Even though in that consent form it was mentioned that it was an experimental surgery, etc., you can still seek relief.
Yes, you can. And if it had direct and direct visible, like I'm just giving you an example, like if it had direct effect on your physical or mental health, and you know that there's a correlation between what the doctor has done and why it's happening, yes, you can definitely press for it.
Okay, thank you. That's a very important question because I know a lot of trans people who've been through such things personally, and also it's debilitating sometimes these procedures. So I think it's a very important. Uh,
Because under even in
uh,
the Trans Act, you cannot. It also says that you cannot be discriminated on any grounds, and you cannot be treated unfairly, and you have every recourse for any kind of medical help or schemes by the government themselves. So that being the case, I don't see just a consent form being a bar for going and seeking relief.
okay. We have a question from our audience. So it was like, it is, I ran out from my family long back when I was 13 years old. Now I'm 39 years old. I do not have any old ID proofs. Can I still claim my parental inheritance? What can I do if my siblings deny it for me?
So these are instances where you can always, like I said before, transgender persons are entitled to every bit of parental inheritance that they inherit. So you can go to civil court and file a case asking for a declaration of title for that particular property, or even partition if that has happened. And in cases where there is absolutely no proof that you belong to the family or you come from that lineage, sometimes there's even DNA tests that is being recommended by the courts. So I would suggest you can go ahead and file a case in the city civil courts where the property lies, and that's how you go and seek recourse in these kind of cases.
Okay. And in a lot of such cases, what I've also heard is that their families declare them dead. So is it how is it legally taken uh, to claim someone as dead to just get their property? Is it a criminal offense to do something like that?
It is certainly illegal to do it because you're also like misrepresenting the the actual facts. So you can once again like even file a complaint before before the police, and also you can also go to the civil courts to enforce your right over the property, saying that this has happened and I was the legal heir and I have identified myself as so on and so forth, and also says this. However, they have sold the property or have they have partitioned the properties among themselves by stating that I was dead, which is untrue. And then you can seek your remedies, because there's something called declaration of title, where you go to courts and say and affirm that this property belongs to you, or like you file a suit for partition and say give my share of properties. So these are simple remedies that they can go for, but it might take quite a while to get a relief, but it's certainly a recourse that you can consider.
Okay, thank you. And what about our personal properties that we have brought pre-transition? Can it be easily transferred to our current names and current ownership?
Is it something that even the Transgender Persons Protection Act talks about, that came out in 2019? So there's an explicit section with this section 3 subclause G, which says that you cannot deny any kind of enjoyment of transgender persons over their purchase of property, or even rent, or even over rental properties, or you can't make them discontinue what they have been enjoying over those properties. So if you might have bought a property before transitioning, and after transitioning you might want to change it in your name, so through the TG Act or through the Gazette method, you can officially change your name and gender, and then go to the sub registrar's office and amend the sale registration deed, or like the patta records in the registration registrar's office. So that is the way how you still have rights over your properties.
Okay, thank you. I have a question about child custody. So, if will a trans man lose his children custody to his children if his husband, if his previous husband uh, divorces him based on his transition?
So there are two ways to go about it. So sometimes the separation between the couple is amicable, whereas the other partner also understands what's happening and they agree to sign something called the co-parenting plan. Like they might separate or they might be together, but they sign something called the co-parenting plan, where they list saying that both so and so and me still have custody over the child, and they have visitation rights, like during winters they'll stay with me, during summer vacation they'll stay with them, and we'll have access throughout the year by meeting them during the weekend. So they write out a fully planned chart through the year and rights and responsibilities of each parent. This is some way through which you can still have custody and access to your child even though you have transitioned. The second way is when the divorce is not amicable, or there's a lot of agitation or like anger between people, and they don't come to a consensus as to how to share custody between the kids. So this way you can still go and file a case and a guardianship and a custody case in the family court or the relevant district court, or even sometimes the high courts, to say that regardless of the transition you have still given birth, or you're still the parent of the child. And this is something you can push for. I personally have not uh, come on like fought for these cases, but this is something you still have legal recourse to.
Okay, someone who's a birth giver has enough rights on the
Yes.
child too.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, a lot of times we use previous legal cases to convince our local judges. How can we use such previous cases that are there for transgender people to make our local judges understand?
Yeah, for example, like I was talking about Jiva at the start of this session, right? So if your education authorities are not like consenting to update your name and GM and name in their educational records and give a copy to you, you can always take a copy of Jiva case saying that, listen, this happened in Karnataka. And the respondents were the authorities who were questioned by the court, where the Karnataka State Education Board and the PUC authorities, and they had in the same similar issue had directed the authorities to go on and change the record. So in law, we call this something called precedence, that a similar set of facts has already happened and it was a similar issue that was raised before a particular judge, and the judge looked at all the prevailing laws and gave a favorable decision to me. And this is something that you also should do, because that's what the law is right now after this judgment. So you can do that by even taking NALSA, because even NALSA is something that is like fundamental to the entire trans rights and the law right now in India. So there is NALSA, there is all these small, like for example, for right to marry, and your marriage registrar is not registering the marriage between a heterosexual and a transgender person, you can always show them the Madras High Court judgment and try to enforce them and see they have taken everything into consideration. Whatever objections that you are quoting, everything is there. And they have said that it's wrong and it's illegal and you have to register the marriage. So this is through which you try to educate the authorities that about your rights and also get to enforce them in a legal
Okay.
manner.
Okay. So, how can I find cases similar to mine? Is there a website, or can I go to the court website, or somewhere I can research if there are cases relating to transgender people?
So CLPR has consolidated most of these laws, including legislation that is the acts such as the TG Act 2019, and even relevant case laws under different themes like right to marry, adoption, inheritance, and under the we under a database called the South Asian Translaw database. I'd be happy to share it with you, the URL of that
Yeah.
database, which
Yeah.
has a collation of all legal documents that gives an entire picture of what the transgender rights are in India, but as well as in South Asian countries as well. For example, what is there in Pakistan, what is there in Nepal, what is there in Sri Lanka. So that would be hugely beneficial, and it's very easy to access. And because every judgment is put under a theme, for
Yeah.
example, legal recognition for gender markers, so that you will find some 2 3 cases, and for example for right to marry you will find 3 cases, and for example and like for appeal against TG cars you'll find 1 case. So you will it's very intuitive website where you can just go and search for what kind of issues you're facing, and if there's something similar that has already been discussed by the courts and given a judgment which is favorable to you. There's also a summary for each judgment, so that you don't sometimes you might not even understand the legalese that's used in the judgments, but the summary will help you understand what the core issue is and what ultimately the judge said.
Okay, that's good to know. And how can a trans person reach CLPR? Is there a number or a website, or how can they get in contact with CLPR? A email address? Or?
Yeah, so we have reach out at clpr.org.in. So that is where most of our translaw clients reach us. And we also have an official number that you can find in the website of clpr.org.in. These are 2 ways that you can reach out to us. And and you can drop in weekly every Tuesday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. So the offline method is also available. So these are some of the ways that you can reach us.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sriraksha. It was a lot of information, and I think I'm sure it has helped a lot of transgender people, and it will help in future as well.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much for having me here. And if you do have any follow up questions, you can reach out to me at sriraksha.v@clpr.org.in, or our social media handles, CLPR underscore trust, or to reach out at clpr.org.in as well. So we'll be happy to answer any of your questions, or like conduct any kind of legal Q&A like how it was done here, and looking forward to such more talks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the time and attention. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.